To the chair, if you can give us a 10-second mental countdown and begin from there, please. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer McKelvey. I am chair of Scarborough Community Council, and I will be chairing today's meeting. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I'd like to call meeting 27 to order. Welcome, everyone. Today's meeting is being held by video conference. City staff are also connecting to the meeting by video conference. The public continue to participate electronically and can watch the meeting stream live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. These measures are necessary to comply with public health guidelines and prevent the spread of COVID-19. I ask everyone for their patience with any delays and technical issues. The clerk staff have connected all registered speakers to the meeting by audio. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Scarborough Community Council's page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Clerk's IT staff will be available to assist members with their devices. I would like to remind staff to keep their mics muted and their videos turned off unless they need to answer questions or speak to the committee. This will make it easier for me as chair and for those watching on YouTube to observe members as they participate and debate and vote on the items. Members, please keep your mic muted unless you wish to question staff or speak to an item, and ensure that your video is on. As part of each agenda item, I will ask members to raise their hand or unmute their mic if they wish to question staff or speak. I will create a speakers list and will call on members when it is their turn to speak. When voting on an item or motion, I ask members to ensure their video is turned on and to raise their hand to indicate their vote. Members, I want to remind you that you must still submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at scc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Although we are meeting in different locations and meeting remotely today, the committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe,
there's going to be exercising activities. There's going to be egg races. There's going to be all sorts of interesting, fun things to do tomorrow. And we're hoping that the rain holds off. And if it doesn't, we'll just be doing it. We'll be wet, but we'll be having fun.
Best of luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks.
To the chair.
Is the stream resumed?
Yes, the stream has resumed, but we'd just like to make you aware that we had a similar issue yesterday occur at least twice during a meeting. So there is the potential for this to happen again, in which case, again, I will need to interrupt. Thank you.
Okay. Did we get past the confirmation of the minutes? That's fine. So we can move on to introduction of business.
Hi, Madam Chair, it's Carly. We weren't able to hear the confirmation of the minutes, no.
But the declaration of interest is okay?
No, I don't believe we were able to hear that either.
Okay, I'll do that again since that's all important stuff. All right, so are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you have an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate the number and the nature of the interest. Seeing none, may I have a motion to confirm the minutes of our last meeting on September 17th, 2021? Councillor Lai, all those in support? All those opposed? That item carries. I have two items of business to introduce. The first one is SC 2710 Tilly Drive traffic concerns in Ward 25. The second is SC 27.11, the Scarborough Opportunity, a comprehensive walking and cycling network. May I have I'll move to introduce them. All those in favor of introducing them to the agenda, and then we'll go through those items as we do the carry through. Okay, that brings us to our first item of business, SC 27.1, final report 2075 Kingston Road in 26 and 50 Village Green Square zoning amendment bylaw. 25 Councillor Mantis, I will hold on your behalf as there are speakers. SC 27.2, final report 1625 Military Trail in 6000 Kingston Road official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications, Ward 25. I will hold as there were speakers. SC 27.3 preliminary report 3310 to 3314 Kingston Road zoning amendment application, Ward 20, Councillor Crawford. I understand that the speakers that had submitted here were with the applicants and they're happy to withdraw unless the committee has any questions for them. Does anybody have questions for the applicants? Okay, in that case, we can release the speakers. And Councillor Crawford, it's your item.
Yeah, I have no, I just have an item, a motion to amend the notification area. I believe clerks have. It's up on there, just Eglinton North, east to Markham, south to the lake, and Bellamy Road to the west.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? All those in favor of the item as amended? All those opposed? That item carries. SC 27.4 preliminary report 3731 to 3431 to 3449 St. Clair Avenue Road zoning amendment application. I will hold as there is one deputant. SC 27.5 preliminary report 1966 to 1980 Eglinton Avenue East zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision applications, Ward 21. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
I can move the item, Madam Speaker, Madam Chair.
All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. SC 27.6 preliminary report 2200 to 2206 Eglinton Avenue East, 1020 to 1030 Birchmount Road and 75 Thermos Road zoning bylaw amendment application, Ward 21. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
I can move the item.
All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. 27.7 preliminary report 3718 and 3730 Kingston Road zoning amendment application, Ward 24. Councillor Ainsley.
I will move the recommendations.
All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. SC 27.8 pay and display parking, Kingston Road, Ward 20.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to actually defer this item to the next meeting, if I could, please.
Okay. All those in support of deferral? All those opposed? That carries. SC 27.9 Highway 2A Toronto Hydro Street Lighting Assessment, Ward 25. I'm happy to move staff recommendations. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. That brings us to the two items of new business that were introduced. The first is SC 2710 Tilly Drive concerns. I'm happy to move staff, sorry, they're not my recommendations, but you're asking staff to do a study. I just also need to move at this time that I have a petition to close Tilly Road that is signed by 71 people at 48 houses. So I'm just moving that onto the record as a communication, and then I'm prepared to move my motion. So all those in favor? All those opposed, that item carries. SC 2711, the Scarborough Opportunity, a comprehensive walking and cycling network. So this is an invitation for a speaker at our next meeting. I would also, just if it's consent to the committee, ask that we can have that speaker go first at 9:30 since it is a guest. So if everybody's okay with that, seeing no objections, I'll move the recommendation to invite them for a presentation. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. That brings us back up to our first item of business today, which is SC 27.1, final report, 2075 Kennedy Road and 26 and 50 Village Green Square zoning bylaw amendment. Ward 22, our first speaker, let me find our list. Our first speaker is Tom Giancos with King Seat Capital.
Hi, Madam Chair and councilors. I just want to start off by, it's Tom Jenkins. I just want to start off by saying we support the recommendations in the staff report, and I want to send out a big thank you to the planners working on the file, Christian and Kelly. Throughout the summer, during their holidays, they were working to get this application across the goalpost, and again, it's greatly appreciated by the team here at KingSet. And I also want to thank Councillor Mantis. He's been on this file for several years now, and we're happy to see it come to a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, that brings us to our second deputant on this item, Adam Brown. Sherman Brown.
There we go. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council. I really have nothing to add from what Tom said. I thank staff for all their hard work, and we're in full support of the report recommendations, and thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for this deputant? Okay, seeing none, questions of staff. Okay, seeing none, speakers on the item? Okay, Councillor Mantis?
Good morning, Madam Chair, colleagues, and city staff. This morning, we are voting on items SC 27.1, final report, 2075 Kennedy Road and 26 and 50 Village Green Square, zoning bylaw amendment. As a councillor for Scarborough Region Court, this development application is the first one that is before SEC after my election. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Christian Vendreska and Kelly Jones, along with all staff members who have worked tirelessly during this pandemic to bring this application to Community Council in a timely manner. In a time where our city is in a housing crisis, this application also brings a desired component of affordable housing, as well as $1.8 million in Section 37 contributions that will be used for the creation of a first permanent outdoor skating rink in Scarborough Region Court. This ward never had a permanent skating rink, and I am proud to say that we will be able to deliver this long-awaited project for everyone to enjoy. I would like to thank the residents of Ward 22 who have assisted through the community consultation process and their comments and feedback in assisting our planners to be able to bring this report here today. I'd like to thank Christian Vendreska and Kelly Jones for their hard work, and I'm moving staff recommendations and asking my colleagues for their support. Thank you.
Okay, any other speakers to this item? Okay, all those in favor of the recommendations? All those opposed? That item carries. Okay, thank you. That brings us to item SC 27.2, final report, 1625 Military Trail and 6000 Kingston Road, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications in Ward 25. I know that the first speaker, Louis Tinker, has asked to go last as the applicant in case there was any questions. Will the committee that we can make that change to the speaker order? Okay, seeing no objections, our first speaker is Bill Yarn with the Highland Creek Association. Bill, are you on the line? You have 5 minutes.
To the chair, that speaker is on the line. They've been provided with the audio panels. To Bill Yarn, you just need to click on Connect Audio at the bottom of your WebEx panel, and we can unmute you so you can speak. This is the host to Bill Yarn. You've been provided with the audio panels. If you click on Connect Audio at the bottom of your WebEx panel, you will be able to speak. To the chair, may I suggest we go to the next speaker who is also connected while I attempt to, oh, it looks like Bill is ready. I apologize. To Bill, I am now unmuting your mic.
Thank you, council members, for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Bill Yarn. I'm a resident of Highland Creek, residing at 37 Watson Street for approximately 24 years. As part of the Highland Creek Community Association, I'm here to express opposition to the proposed rezoning and development of 1625 Military Trail. The proposed development fails to respect the planning guidelines documented in the Highland Creek Secondary Plan. This site lies within the Highland Creek Village Secondary Plan, which limits the number of stories to 6. The 2 buildings proposed are designed for 8 stories plus a mechanical floor, bringing it almost to 9 stories high. Additionally, the proposed suite configuration is not oriented to family communities such as Highland Creek. There are too many tiny units. 58% are studios and 1 bedrooms with an average size less than 40 meters squared. Many of you council members' homes have master bedrooms or living rooms that are larger than the entire living space in these tiny units. Calculations of 5 Kingston Road development proposals show a majority of units of 2-bedroom units or larger. Most are at better than 50% 2 and 3 bedroom. Why can't All-Tree align themselves with this? The All-Tree proposal has a minority of the 2 bedrooms. A review of the suite configuration of this development reveals that more appropriately sized units would result in a significant savings to the developer in the range of $9 million plus and eliminate the need for a 3rd underground level for parking spaces. The average size unit would increase by 22% to 71 meters squared, with almost 60% being 2 bedrooms or larger. The proposal does not respect the voice of the community. In July 2020, the Highland Creek Community Association circulated a survey regarding development in the village. 91.2% are opposed to any development over 6 stories and confirmed planning guidelines and rules should be followed. The results of the survey were clear and the voice of the community needs to be heard. History of the community consultations. 1 virtual public meeting took place November 3rd, 2020. According to City Planner Sophie Knowles, over 300 people signed on to have their say, including myself. Very few were granted opportunity to speak. The consultation with the community resulted in a poor representation of the community. Half of the meeting time allowed was granted to the city staff and All-Tree, with under 1 hour's time granted for questions to the community participants. There was little space for questions and no opportunity for rebuttal. The Highland Creek Community Association requested to speak and was not given an opportunity to do so. The show and tell open house put on by the developer to gather community input. Where is this input? How could the city expect a community over 3,900 homes to examine and develop the developer's plans during a condo building presentation walkthrough, taking over 2 evenings with only 2 hours allocated per evening? This public open condo presentation scheduled in a time where COVID restrictions were in place. Council members, how can this possibly be considered fair and adequate community consultation? Council members, you may recall back in 2021, the Highland Creek Community Association submitted to you letters from our local MP and MPP in support of appropriate development of the proposed site to be consistent with current zoning bylaws and existing Highland Creek secondary plan. The letters clearly express this is important in order to ensure that the historical character of the Highland Creek community is preserved. Highland Creek Heritage Village is one of the oldest villages in Toronto, established in the mid-1800s, with 7 designated historical landmarks throughout the neighborhood. Residents have chosen to live here because of the village feel and because it's an area which contains mainly single-family homes and overall low-built form. Council, the views of the community have been clear and consistent over the years of the outcome they are seeking for the Highland Creek Village. We're requesting an appropriate development that respects the views of the community and adheres to the in-place secondary plan and zoning bylaws. I'd like to thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for your deputation. Any questions for the deputant? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to our next deputant, Brian Blakely. Brian, are you on the line? You have 5 minutes.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Councillor McKelvey. You're hearing me okay?
Brian.
Thank you. Good morning, Council, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning on the Highland Creek Community Association concerns about the development's impact on the Highland Creek environment. I'm the Director of Environment for the Highland Creek Community Association. And I will attempt to be brief and to the point this morning because I know we are all very busy. The first issue I would like to talk to is the TCRA report, and I'm specifically speaking to page 20 of the staff report of September 22nd. Perhaps the most important issue being addressed to the developer by the Conservation Authority is the water balance. So currently the site has no construction or structures on it. Previously it was the Highland Creek Inn site. So it's an open field that catches water, filters it through the soil and eventually down the slope to the creek. And TRCA is concerned that during construction and have indicated concern that during construction and post-construction that the amount of water and the quality of water entering the Highland Creek watershed is maintained. This is, in our view, the most important environmental consideration for the long-term sustainability of Highland Creek. Yet, as you see on the bottom of page 20, the issue remains outstanding, and we do not understand why we would be proceeding with approval when the Conservation Authority hasn't had a satisfactory plan put forward by the developer for this critical issue. And you can see on page 53, the site plan, where the problem may well lie. What is currently an open field will be substantively covered by 2 condominium towers, residential towers, covering a significant portion of the field, therefore affecting the amount of water that seeps into the ground and sustains the slope and the Highland Creek. In addition to the actual buildings, there is concrete sidewalks being added, parking and access roads. So there's a significant reduction in the amount of open ground that you will see. And the question may be, why is this important? First of all, the water sustains the slope vegetation, which retains the slope stability, which eventually feeds into the creek. And the quality of the water entering the creek is critical to the aqua life of the creek. But the slow process of water seeping through the ground also protects against flooding and erosion of the creek. And I won't be very long on flooding, but flooding in the Highland Creek and impacting on human development dates back to the 1800s with the Danforth Road construction, significant flooding in the creek during Hurricane Hazel, and several significant floods in I think in all of our memory, perhaps in 1976, 86, and in 2001 and ongoing. The erosion and the movement of the creek as a result of the human development changes on the stability of the flow of the shoreline and of the regulation of watering entering the creek has created a lot of flood events, which have cost the city a great deal of money in rebuilding infrastructure as recently as the Highland Creek overpass work that was just recently completed on the bridge. So in conclusion, we think that this application should be held until the issues with The water infiltration have been resolved to the satisfaction of the Conservation Authority, and I hope that council would consider our input and welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you for your deputation, Brian. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to our final applicant, deputant, which was Louis Tinker, who is with the applicant, but he said he only had to speak should people have questions for him. So are there any questions for the proponent? Okay, seeing none, we can move to questions of staff. I have questions of staff, if we can get them online. Councillor Ainsley, did you have questions of staff also?
I do.
Okay, do you want to go first?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Is it to Christian?
Yes, please.
Yep.
Christian is the manager on the file, so please direct questions to Christian.
Okay, perfect. Christian, I wanted to ask about the height of the building. It has it's got a military trail address and a Kingston Road address. I was wondering, and years ago, I would say 15 years ago now, we put in the city passed the Kingston Road incremental growth study, which set a maximum height of 8 stories between what is now the Gilwood GO train station and Beach Grove and Kingston Road. You know, it stopped at the bridge. Is this a continuation of building heights along Kingston Road that the city sees with that growth study?
Through the chair, this is a separate planning framework. It is the Highland Creek Community Secondary Plan and Community Zoning Bylaw. You are correct in that just on the west side of the bridge, 8 stories is an as-of-right permission. The east of the bridge in the Highland Creek community, the current as-of-right condition is 6 stories for this site, which the applicant is requesting an increase to 8.
Yeah, but it's also part of their address is on Kingston Road. So would that be in like kind of the city's planning vision for Kingston Road?
Part of the review of the application was taking into account the adjacent rights of way. So Kingston Road and Military Trail. The Kingston Road right of way is actually quite wider than what an 8-story building usually rests up against. We're seeing some development heights west of Kingston Road in the incremental growth study area above the 8-story permission because of the width of Kingston Road. So while a cyclist or a pedestrian or a driver is not going to realize the difference between the zoning bylaws as they're traversing these areas, there is a slight difference in the planning framework on the east and west side of the bridge.
Okay, and how do we mesh that building height difference? Like this has got a military trail address and it's got a Kingston Road. Like how do we come to grips with that? Like the community seems to be concerned about it.
Of course. Through the chair, the citywide mid-rise performance guidelines, the urban design guidelines, are what we use to evaluate the application to ensure that, you know, it's a consistent application of built form principles, regardless of what the height permissions are. And this application on the military trail side and the Kingston Road side fully conform to those guidelines to ensure shadow control, pedestrian scale perception, and that the building sits appropriately on its site.
Okay. And then the one deputant had some concerns about drainage on down into the ravine, and that the TRCA doesn't seem happy or content or has given their approval. Can you comment on that?
I'll provide an initial comment. There is staff from TRCA on the call today, and he may be able to elaborate further on the technical details. But ultimately, the general principles of this infiltration gallery to do just what the deputant was asking, which was to ensure that the water coming to the site post-development and during construction is of a similar quality and quantity to what is currently hitting the site and moving through the soil to the ravine. The principles of that have been confirmed. Final details are being worked out. And I bring your attention, Councillor, to we're just recommending that the application be approved. But until those details are confirmed, we're holding bills for enactment until the TRCA is fully satisfied. So again, the applicant, it's my understanding, has worked these issues through with TRCA. They're just papering the response for resubmission, and potentially by the time we arrive at City Council, the TRCA matters will be fully addressed to their satisfaction. Mark, if you wanted to add any of that, Mark from TRCA, I'm in your hands.
Hi, Christian. Mark Rappis, TRCA, and through you, Madam Chair. Yes, I would completely agree with your response and echo everything you have to say on this matter. Thank you.
So Mark, is that something in terms of landscaping, the TRCA would have some input? I know that some developments along the Highland Creek Ravine, they have a bit of a swale atop a bank to prevent, excess water from flowing into the ravine. Is that something that the TRCA would be looking for on this development, or?
No. If I recall the plans that we've been reviewing, which I don't have in front of me, but I seem to recall that the buffer area, the tableland buffer to the ravine, the grading would have to remain in its current condition. So
okay.
we don't want to see any disturbance to the grades in the tableland buffer zone.
So right now, you're content with the way the water is draining off a top of bank, and you think that that'll be sufficient once this development's in?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ainsley. Any additional questions of staff? Okay, I have some questions. So my first question is about building height, and I think you talked about how, while you see that it's not fitting with the secondary plan, it does fit with other guidelines. I also want to confirm, so staff are giving a positive recommendation on this and also had recommended 8 on this site previously?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. A portion of the site previously did have, when it was originally brought to council, an 8-story height permission.
Okay. And you're giving a positive recommendation today?
Yes, that's correct. We feel that the development appropriately responds to the urban design guidelines and the context.
Okay. How is the impact of height mitigated through this design, and how has it changed since the application first came forward? And is this setting any precedent for the other parcels of land in the village?
Through you, the staff have worked with the applicant to ensure that the buildings are fully under the angular planes, as I described in answering Councillor Ainsley's question. The big moves have been to increase the setbacks from Military Trail, as well as step backs above the 6th story. So the 7th and 8th stories are actually receded from the 6th story, so that pedestrians will not really perceive much of the additional building height. It also transitions, or not transitions, but terraces down towards the valleys for similar reasons. Ultimately, we evaluated the shadow conditions, found them to be appropriate. There's no real impact on lands designated neighborhoods. And the site's location in the southernmost part of the village really is against the 27-meter right-of-way is really the two kind of key considerations as to whether or not this is a precedent-setting development. There's really only one site in the village that's large enough to accommodate this scale of development, has the appropriate adjacent right-of-way width to accommodate the scale of development, and that's really this property. Every application is site-specific. We review it on a site-specific basis. So if someone were to come in on an additional site and just point at this and say, well, that's 8 stories, we'd like 8 stories as well, if they don't have the right combination of site size, right-of-way width, and of course the other technical requirements of infrastructure, we can't say that is a precedent. I don't believe that it is.
Okay. How can we ensure traffic isn't infiltrating into the village, causing impacts, and is there sufficient parking on site?
Through you, again, the transportation impact study was reviewed by Transportation Services, who recommended the parking rates, which are before you today, and they're satisfied with the unit mix and count that there is sufficient parking in the below grade structure, as well as car share spaces provided at grade. The infiltration question is really one that's wrapped up with the transportation master plan, which was adopted by council earlier this year, which this development begins the early implementation of through some signal warrant analysis of the Military Trail and Kingston Road intersection. Westbound movements are pretty simple. They can exit the development site and even under current conditions and get to Kingston Road to head west. Eastbound movements do have to use streets that would traverse through the village, but when the signal is put in, as it is council's desire now to put in a signal at Military Trail and Kingston Road, those eastbound movements will just be Military Trail, Kingston Road, and out towards the 401.
Okay. What community benefits have you negotiated with this application?
The shortest answer is before you today is a recommendation for a financial contribution of $1 million towards streetscape improvements to enhance streetscape elsewhere in the village to ensure a vibrant pedestrian realm. There's a number of community initiatives about, creating that village feel and making sure that when the transportation master plan is implemented, that it's sort of enhanced with additional streetscape, and the $1 million before you recommended today is to do just that. A still short but slightly elaborated answer is that there's a number of city building benefits that are being recommended today. Off-site park improvements to expand Morris Park and development charge credit opportunity to build it out with parkland facilities. Right now it's just tables and trees and grass, and with the development charge credits could become playscapes and splash pads and a really vibrant thing at the heart of the village. Also, lands are being conveyed across top of Bank to TRCA and public ownership to expand the Highland Creek Valley system and ensure proper conservation. And as I mentioned in my previous answer, early work on the transportation master plan related to signal improvements or pedestrian crossing to the park.
Last question. Should we not approve this today, what would be the what could the applicant do? Is there a possibility for this to go to the Ontario Land Tribunal?
Should we not? Through the chair, the applicant has been working with us to arrive at Community Council today with a positive report, but they haven't been in a position to appeal a non-decision for a while, but chose to work with staff to address concerns. If council were to turn the application down, of course, they would be able to exercise appeal rights.
When something goes to appeal, does that mean that Section 37 and height are up to be renegotiated, or what could change on appeal?
Through you, the new rules under the OLT are similar to the Ontario Municipal Board rules, where it is relatively a de novo hearing. So matters which have been secured through the negotiation and review of the application are potentially at risk through a hearing process.
Okay, thank you. And apologies to my colleagues, I went 1 minute late on that. Any additional questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to speakers. I have an amendment, so I'd like to speak first, if that's okay. Maybe we can pull this up. So thank you. So the first recommendation that I have is asking the director and directing the chief planner, executive director of city planning to provide a supplemental report to Toronto City Council at the November 9th meeting, discussing how the hydrogeologic characterization has taken place on this site. What is the stormwater management plan and the erosion management plan? How has that been reviewed as part of the development? And then also what additional geotechnical issues are reviewed as part of the site plan application? Because we did hear through some of the questions that some of that will be looked at a later stage as well. The second is with agreements from the proponent to amend Part 6A1 of item the Section 37 contribution to replace $1 million with $1.35 million. So they've agreed to additional community benefits to improve the village. And the last part is to decrease the total number of studio units. So that is decreasing the units by an additional 20, so that there's a maximum of 62% bachelors on the site, a minimum of 30% 2 bedrooms, and a minimum of 10% 3 bedrooms. So those are amendments. And then just briefly, I know that this is, nobody likes development, but I think that our best option here is to make these amendments to try to implement this in the way that has the setbacks that have been requested, that improves the community benefits, and to support the proposal as is today. This site has twice received a 8-story recommendation positive from staff. I also know that the history of this site, every time that it comes back bigger, larger. They started with a townhouse proposal many years ago. It was then a 4-story seniors rental building. At some point there was 6-story proposed. Now we're at 8. I have no doubt that if this goes forward, does not go forward today, this starts to come back at a height that's even higher than it is right now. So I'm hopeful that we will get some good information from city staff about the outstanding environmental concerns that have been raised. I share those concerns. I look forward to reading that report, and I'm prepared to support the staff recommendations with this amendment today. Any other speakers? Okay, so with that, we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? That's unanimous. All those in favor of the application as amended? Okay, seeing none opposed, that item carries. That brings us back to our agenda. That brings us to item SC 27.4, preliminary report 3431 to 3449 St. Clair Avenue East zoning amendment report 20. Our first speaker is Mike Bennett.
Yes, good morning. Thank you to the committee and the chair for welcoming me today. I am a planner at W&D Associates. We're the applicant for this file. I'll be very brief. We've received the staff report. We've reviewed it. We're in support of its recommendations, and I would also like to acknowledge that we've had additional discussions with staff on more of an informal basis about potential changes to the plan moving forward, which we are currently contemplating at this time. And I'll essentially leave it at that. Should staff have any, or should council have any questions of me, I'd be certainly happy to answer them. But otherwise, I'll turn it back to you, the chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant? Okay, seeing none. Questions of staff? Speak to the item.
Yeah, Madam, I have a motion to increase the notification area. Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate the applicant is coming. It's very early on in the process, as we all know, and it's important that we have the appropriate consultation within the community. So I've expanded the area to ensure that the broadest aspect of the community that will be impacted by this potential development will have an opportunity to be part of the process. Hence, I'm moving this motion.
Thank you. All those in favor of the amendment? Seeing none opposed, all those in favor of the item as amended? Seeing none opposed, okay, that item carries. I have a hold on SC 27.5, but I thought that Deputy Mayor Thompson already moved that, so I'm not sure why it's still held.
Madam Chair, I believe that's just an error. It was adopted.
Okay, great. So that brings us to the enactment of the bylaws. Councillor Ainsley is ready to move them.
Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw Bill 828, prepared for the October 15th, 2021 meeting number 27 of the Scarborough Community Council.
Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. Is there any additional business for this meeting? Councillor Ainsley, would you like to move this one also?
Sure. Yes, please. That the Scarborough Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Scarborough Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting number 27 on October 15th, 2021.
All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. Any additional business? Okay. Clerk's not saying anything. So I think we got all the bills. We got everything done. Thank you, everybody. Have a great morning.
Happy weekend, everybody. Stay safe.
Good weekend, everybody.